Alrighty, so I am going live on YouTube for the first time. So we will see how this happens. Oh, I noticed the lighting is, oh yeah, of course, I will have to invest in some proper lighting and maybe some proper, not maybe, proper microphone and all those kinds of things. Well, gotta just sort of learn things as we go along or as I go along, but as I give advice to my clients as well. So I'm just going to sort of play around and have a look, and I'm certainly not going to play around with too much here. Um, Actually, you know what? I don't even know if I've set this to be, because I have no viewers right now, right? So I'm going to see if I can figure out during the broadcast, which I may not be able to. See if that everybody can see this, because I think I set this to be private. Well, I guess we're just going to learn as we go along. So I'm going to share this. I think I already did, but let's see here if I can actually quickly, let's see if I can get the settings. And it's showing, yeah. Well, okay. I don't know. I guess we're just going to have to go with the flow. So I want to see if there is anybody here. Public. No, it's public. Okay, great. That's what I was looking for. Oh, yeah, you live and learn. I've set my settings to different things. Okay. So I don't see anybody here, but what I'm going to do is I mumble along. Maybe I will edit this later. I am going to post this. Let's see how it goes. I gotta just live and learn. I'm gonna post this into my business page again and see if I can get anybody to join me. I don't know. It's sort of saying I have to. No, it's getting like some weird link. We will see if it works. It's it's sort of giving a link to. Geez, gotta live and learn, huh? Technology. Let's see. What is this link for? YouTube video page. YouTube page video embedded. Well, let's try that. This is kind of funny, actually. Edit post. Let's see if that works or not. I'm going to hopefully edit this part out, of course. Yeah, that doesn't look good either. Well, let us see. You know what? You always got to just live and learn. I don't know. It's saying YouTube page. Let's see if this is going to work. Let's see. Let's see if that works any better. Does that take? Yeah, that kind of works. Okay. Yeah, that kind of works. Okay. So let us see if I can get this over into my group. And then I'm just going to start, and I will probably end up editing this all out because I had to figure this stuff out. You got to live and learn and just go with it, right? And just play with stuff, right? I don't know if YouTube Live really makes any sense considering it's all about Facebook Live now. But let's see how this goes. And I thought I turned off all my alerts. Okay. Well, I don't know if anybody else. Oops, that's kind of silly. I'm like putting a finger into the presentation. I am going to. Oh, what is this sound? Sound adjusted your audio volume. Okay, great. We're learning so much every day. Okay, nobody is here, but that's okay. I am going to start. So for those that don't know me, my name is Sylvia Waldman, and I am a Canadian immigration lawyer, although that's kind of like yawn, boring. People have all these kind of preconceived ideas of what lawyers are and, you know, what immigration lawyers like are, what they can do for clients, and a whole lot of expectations. So really, I'm really not an immigration lawyer anymore, in the sense that I am, like, I'm here, I'm physically here, I'm Sylvia Waldman, haha, and I am still a licensed lawyer, licensed by the Law Society of Upper Canada, which is Ontario. But basically, more importantly, I've really spent the last several years kind of throwing this idea around with colleagues and in my own mind, in my own headspace. And really, I'm rebranding myself, or basically I'm reinventing myself. It's not like I need to invent myself or reinvent myself, because I'm real, I live, I exist. But basically trying to get the word out to, people, social media, friends, colleagues, clients, former clients, future clients, etc., that I'm really practicing and doing things a lot differently. I am not just trying to be somebody who fills out your immigration forms. In fact, I don't want to do that. I'm really big on empowering people I work with to really learn how to do things for themselves. Of course, to guide them at the beginning, especially, or throughout, but to be more like a coach. It's not exactly the best word, but like a coach or a strategist, where you're touching it, you know the big picture, but it's like those little details. It's like the 5% of information that really can help avoid problems in the future, or just kind of makes the difference to tweak things so that you get through the process of migration to Canada a lot smoother. So it actually feels like, I would say to clients who've commented like, that was easy, like people who know Business Depot or Staples, right? Boom, the red button, that was easy. Well, it feels easy, and it's not about stroking my ego, but like it felt easy, or it feels easy. And in fact, I have some clients who've told me that they're like, it felt easy, but I know I felt easy because I had you along the way to guide me to avoid common problems or pitfalls or innocent mistakes, that basically people make along the way. So essentially, it's kind of a long introduction to how I'm really trying to get the message out, to people, and I'm not doing it 100% greatly, so said the English major graduate, at the beginning, but I'm basically trying to empower people through really these posts on YouTube, Facebook, and again, I'm getting better at newsletters and all the kind of information that I'm trying to share. It's not to replace individual legal advice, because that's not what I'm giving in these live streams or newsletters. It's not. It's information, because if you truly have like a specific legal question that you want your specific answer for, meaning you don't want to be looking on Google, Facebook, forums, whatever, or, doing my, challenges. So the 5-day Canadian job search challenge, which is actually, this is sort of, I consider this like part 2 of that. It was 5 emails, daily emails that I sent out to about almost 80 people that signed up, and just giving them tips and strategies on, some of it may be obvious, but things are not always obvious. They're not obvious to the people who are asking the questions, obviously. But basically tips and strategies on really, the big question I always get and have gotten for so many years, which is why I'm here and rebranding myself as a career coach and strategist more than an immigration lawyer, because it's about finding work, right? And it's about finding work before you get here. Which is the challenge for many who are outside of Canada. But it's also about really how to find meaningful work or a career that's related to your education, whether your education was from within Canada, because I've had so many international students even who graduated end up getting jobs, but they've I say wasted sometimes 5-6 years of studying 2, 3, 4 years and then working in Canada, but really coming to me too late, and their permit's expiring in 3 months, but then they haven't, as we sit down and find out, they haven't really used their time wisely in Canada to build a proper professional network, even if they're a new graduate and young, to really connect and understand the Canadian employment landscape, right? And to succeed, you kind of have to know these things. You're never going to know things all at the beginning. Of course not. What did I know when I became a lawyer, right? Zero, nothing, or went to law school. I knew a little bit before the age of internet, and that's how old I am. But the truth of the matter is that you kind of, the best way to understand and know things is to talk to people, sort of in the industry that you want. And it doesn't mean that you then just send them this spammy kind of email or random WhatsApp text or Facebook Messenger and all that kind of stuff. No, it means understanding and knowing how to do it in the most effective way so that it gets you the result that you want, meaning understanding the industry in Canada that you're in, learning the landscape of your profession, learning who the key people are in the profession, learning what the key issues are in the profession. And so that's so that you can make your life easier to hopefully succeed in, beyond only your immigration status. It's like succeed also in the career that you've invested often like tens of thousands, sometimes 100,000 in your education. And it makes no sense to me that you wouldn't then try to like gather the information about what happens after. So, a lot of the questions I get from people who are not in Canada, and they think it's hopeless. But, the truth is, I also get these questions from people who are in Canada studying and working, or even recent immigrants, or even people who've been here for several years, not all of whom have been my clients, either through friends, whatever, about like how to navigate the Canadian employment situation, right? So that's really what my whole point is to really help people earliest on, help them help themselves. Again, not in terms of legal advice for their immigration, but really the career and employment landscape. So that was a very long intro to what I want to talk about today, which is basically tips and strategies on, really mastering the Canadian job search. And, warning, I don't have any magical solution, right? I don't have a one-stop shop, like a one solution fits all kind of advice that isn't realistic. Is just never going to happen. I mean, even a Canadian who graduates from law school, who asks me, and they have, right? How do I find a job, or how do I start, a practice like you did when you were 30, right? I'm now 46, and it didn't happen in a day, right? I just think back even to that question, and I tell young people, young lawyers now, like, wow, that first of all, that process took me like 6-8 months, and this is before everything was online, before everything was like in the first 10 hits of Google. It took 6-8 months of like daily tasks. And of course I was working full time still in the government, but it really took like, I didn't really know what I was doing, but it took kind of, the steps that I want to really generally talk about today, and the steps I talk about when I do my one-on-one career coaching, which I'm doing like less and less of, because I really want to focus on the online like schools, do it yourself, and really because that represents 80-90% of people. If you're willing to put the work in, if you're willing to invest a bit in like an online course, which I'll be talking about later today, this evening at 6 p.m. that I'm launching very soon, you'll want to get in on that, because really it's a small investment relative to investing one-on-one consultants or immigration lawyers. And the truth is, no immigration lawyer, no consultant is ever going to be able to guarantee the results, no matter what fees you pay them. So it's not to minimize that kind of service, because for some people, the one-on-one or consultants, lawyers, recruiters, whatever, that's what they want to invest in, and that's what they believe is going to be the answer to all their problems about finding work in Canada. And it may be, right? But I think a lot of it can be resolved if you're willing to put the work in as a potential Canadian employee and a potential immigrant to Canada or foreign worker in Canada. If you're willing to put the work in, like I said, creating this online course, and we'll create more online courses, really putting together all of the questions I get, the common questions I get like every day from so many people around the world. So trying to put it in a package that people can consume and digest, that's, like I said, affordable and as step-by-step as possible. And if, like anything, if you follow it, it should get you the results, or better results than just doing it on your own. Anyway, so that said, today I want to talk, and I'm going to see, and again, this is like my first Facebook, Google Hangout on air, not Facebook, sorry, back up, YouTube, Google Hangouts on air, integration. They've integrated with the Google Hangouts, YouTube. And so I wanted to play with it because I'm going to try this screen share. Now, I have not done a proper presentation, so I'm going to do a screen share. We're going to see how that goes. What I wanted to do is, now again, I don't know if yeah, it's not really proper, is it? Yeah, I'm going to have to learn how to get that done a lot better. So you know what? I'm going to turn off now if I can figure out how to turn off the screen share. Yeah, we're going to turn that off. It's not really going to work. So I'll figure that out. I know there's a way to figure it out, but I'm not going to figure it out right now during the broadcast. So what I wanted to talk about are really, like I said, I didn't do a presentation because I just wanted to more like sort of visually, you know, for those people that don't like to necessarily read or, you know, don't read the details, although it's important if you want to succeed, you know, at your job in Canada, whatever you end up doing, knowing the details, of course. But basically, I wanted to start the beginning. So like day one, there's no official beginning, I guess, to your Canadian job search and in terms of the tips that I'm going to give you, but in a way there is, right? You kind of, you know, a building is a high rise has to be built with a proper foundation, right? So basically, that's what I talked about, and I'm in my email challenge day one, and that's what I'll talk about right now to start. Is you've really got to get the, you know, Michael Jordan. You know, there's a quote that I used in my email series. You know, Michael Jordan, from Michael Jordan. You know, get the fundamentals down, and the level of everything you do will rise. Right. So once you have the fundamentals, right? Like everything else is a building block, and everything else will feel easier if you've done the work to start and to build, you know, even though it may not be easier to somebody who's looking outside who hasn't put in that work, right? So really, like I said, before you start thinking about how am I going to find a job in Canada, or, you know, emailing recruiters, messaging me, help me find a job, whatever, all that stuff is useless and pointless. Okay, really it is. There's no Canadian employer like waiting with bated breath for you. Trust me, whatever Immigration Canada is telling you on the website that Canada needs immigrants, yes and no. Okay, I'm not going to discuss and debate that here right now in terms of the numbers and all of that stuff about that we're bringing in. The truth of the matter is, you know, you're not going to find a job or meaningful job or career in Canada before you get here, even after you get here, by like spamming people and begging them for jobs, right? Like it isn't going to happen. You're going to annoy people, HR recruiters, employers, you're just managers, whatever. You are just not going to find a job that way, okay? So like that's sort of like pre-tip one, right? But I mean, the main part about establishing your foundations, right? So now here I'm talking about people who are not I'm talking about people who are not permanent residents yet, right? Of course, like in these examples, in this video. So really, you should have an express entry profile, right? So like, seems kind of like obvious, and some people do who message me, and some people don't. Like I said, I just assume people get this because it is on the Immigration Canada website. It's on 1,000,001 forums, of course, and on other Facebook groups, and it seems to be obvious, but I still get tons and tons of questions like every day in my WhatsApp, in my email, and texts, Facebook, whatever, you name it, the 1,000,001 ways that people connect with me, Viber, whatever. I've tried to minimize all that because it's just too much. You kind of need to have an express entry profile, right? So meaning if you're not like Canadian job ready, and you won't be if you sort of haven't gone through the process to like be able to qualify under express entry, like generally, you're not really, it's pointless to be like looking for jobs or sending out resumes. Like on some level, it's pointless. Now, I'm going to talk about that. It may not be, because you want to, you know, get research and things like that, you know, out of the way and ongoing, even if you don't have an express entry profile or don't qualify like yet. But like, you kind of need to have that, like that's like a basic, or think about like that's your end goal, because everything from here on end, from January 2015 and for the foreseeable future, is going to start and end with the express entry profile, generally speaking, right? Like no more visa applications, no more like live people sifting through hundreds of thousands of applications they'll never get through. They're really managing, the government, the immigration department, through your express entry profile, and really getting rid of people who just will never qualify or will never succeed in their mind here. It doesn't mean you won't, but the government has to set up, you know, cutoffs, and that's how they're doing it, right? So that's number one, right? Number two is, you know, you need to have like IELTS. So I'm talking about English, you know, like I said, I'm talking about English, right? English speakers, I speak French, I function in French, but I don't practice in French, so I'm not talking about French immigration, and that would be more like the TEF, or, you know, so that's the French test. But basically, you know, you need to like have an English test, and I mean at least, like I say, 6 if you're kind of in the lower knock stuff, but you're aiming for 7 or higher, right? The higher your English score overall, the higher like the higher chance that an employer, like I said, wherever you are in that process, if you want to reach out or research or whatever, the higher chance that a Canadian employer is going to realize like you can like function in the Canadian workforce, right? If I want to go to Germany, right, thinking that I'm going to function in the German workforce, even as a smart, career coach, strategist, lawyer, is completely unrealistic. Quite frankly, better example, right? I'm born in Romania, right? My mother tongue, native tongue is Romanian, right? But the problem is I left when I was 3 months old, so I speak it with a very like old, 45-year-old kind of accent or like words and all that, because I learned it from like my parents. So, what are the expectations that although I'm fluent to speak it, I'm not fluent to write it, I'm not fluent to read it necessarily, but what are the chances that I could function as like, a high-priced whatever lawyer or business person in Romania? Although English is of course used more and more, the chances of me thinking I'm just going to hit the ground running, even in my country of birth and with my native language, because of my situation of not having like grown up there, knowing the lingo of law in Romanian, it's completely unrealistic, right? So I'd almost have to go through the same process to like, I'm not like immigrating into my home like country citizenship, but my point is that really high level of language in the country of destination, i.e. Canada, which is English and of course French, but I'm talking about English, really is key. So you've got to have like a recent IELTS, which means like the last year or two, but you really need to be aiming. So you need to be aiming for high marks, right? 7, 8, 9, whatever. So you're going to need to practice. There's tons of free resources. I'm not here to plug any free resources, or you might have to invest in like a teacher group, group. There's so much things now online, group, classes or whatever, and invest, usually months, and it means regular investment. It doesn't mean you show up like once a week or once every couple of weeks, practice for an hour, think you are going to succeed at getting like an 8 or 9 in your IELTS. That's just not realistic, right? So I'm all about like what's realistic and what's not. Many people want to get here and come here and succeed, but the brutal reality is that most will not. Why? Not because you can't, but because you're not willing to put the work in and sacrifice whether time, money, energy, whatever it is, right? So IELTS. So number one, express entry profile seems obvious. You kind of need to aim to have that or have that, right? Even whatever your marks are, but at least have that, right? Like I said, the IELTS, right? And so the number 3 that I started out with the foundations for people to understand in my email series, and that I'm talking about now, are really working on getting your foreign credentials, assessed, right? So, that means that you've got to go through the formal process. Again, this stuff is on the Immigration Canada website. Sorry, I'm going to have some coffee. This stuff is on the Canadian Immigration website and in a million forums, but I still get questions like every day about that. Do I need to get them assessed? How do I assess them? And the answer is yes. You will not get any points in the express entry profile system unless you get your education assessed. Now, what you need assessed and, spouses and high school and all that, you're going to have to figure out on your own through the organization that you choose, and, decide by reading what's on the internet about the express entry point system, whether or not it's worth it, right? So you may decide you don't want to get your high school assessed because, because you've got like master's and PhD, and that may be true for you. Again, every case is going to be different, but the reality is that, you have to understand, again, like people in Canada, employers, the education system here, if you decide to go further or upgrade or whatever, the truth is they don't know, that this high school in India ever existed. They don't even know if your degree is real or whatever. So that's why the foreign credentials assessment process kind of forces people to do this a certain way and to at least give more of a stamp that your education is actually real, okay? Because it's not that you're lying, but there are a lot of people, some, whatever, that have lied, do lie, whatever, in the process with their education, right? Because, officers are not really meeting people. They're not like going to hang out at the school you went to, finding out if it existed, still exists, right? Sometimes it may not exist, right? People coming from countries where there's been war, right? 15 years, maybe like the school was bombed or shut down. I don't know, like if you're from Afghanistan or Syria or whatever it is, or maybe it was hit by like some natural occurrence, like an earthquake, right? So, and it doesn't exist anymore, right? Like these things are possible, right? So in that case, it'd be hard to get, your credentials assessed, but that's a different story. Again, that's where, you're probably good to seek legal advice, right? And not waste your time going in circles, right? About how to deal with that situation, and then just deal with it, right? but those are like, you know, extreme situations. But really getting your credentials assessed, so whether it's starting from high school into your undergraduate or, you know, college degrees or whatever, is a must, because you will not get any recognition in Canada in the immigration process, migration process, work permit process, whatever you want to call it, or even when you get here, right? An employer, you know, they assume you have, I mean, on some level, they're going to assume you have your education, but maybe some employers will actually want proof that, you know, besides getting permanent residence status or getting here, you know, they're going to want proof, whether it's for the a work permit process that maybe, you know, they're willing to support you for, even if you've studied and then working. Like maybe some Canadian employer will ask, like, you need to prove, and I mean, often you do, even if you're Canadian. Like I years ago applied for some jobs in the government, like refugee board member, and even though I've been a lawyer and it's easily verifiable with the Law Society of Upper Canada that, like, I am a lawyer, I graduated from a Canadian like law school, I have, you know, I have to have had that, and it's like I said, easily verifiable at some level, I was still required, if you can believe it or not, to actually make like a full copy of my degree and get it certified. It sounds crazy. It was like, you know, this big. I had to go like copy it at some special store. I had to go get it like certified by a colleague because I couldn't certify my own copy. And I think at one point they were saying before they actually hire me that I'd have to literally do like certified transcripts from like my law school to prove that I actually graduated from law school, which again, like seems crazy, right? Like I never did that because I just like withdrew my application. But, you know, if I wanted it bad enough, I would have had to do it, right? Or else I just don't meet the requirements. So that's the way you need to think about like meeting the fundamentals and the basics. You can't just say, well, I don't want to, or I don't have time. Fine, if you do, you just need to understand that you're not going to be able to be, you know, in the pool of people that any Canadian employer is going to consider. And I mean, and more importantly, like on some level, like for immigration, right? So express entry, IELTS language tests, and your foreign education. Again, this stuff is not like, I don't have any new information for people who are, you know, listening and watching, but these are, like I said, consistent questions I get, you know, from people in groups and in, you know, whatever, emails. And so the reality is that although there are people who know this, obviously these are not the people who are like asking these questions, and not who this like video is aimed for, or who might, you know, do it yourself course, at least on some level, although it'll have much more than this, of course, you know, on, you know, really mastering the Canadian employment search and understanding the Canadian employment, you know, like marketplace. This, like I said, these are the fundamentals, right? So when I went on to, so we'll go on to day 2, right? So like day 2 then, so once we've got the basics like that sort of laid out, you know, what would be the next step, as I was trying to think, like, how do I always explain this to people and my clients or whatever? So, I mean, step 2 is, it sounds, again, kind of silly, right? But like a Canadian resume, right? Or Canadian style resume, or CV. I mean, CV is more for if you're an academic, right? But there is no such thing as a perfect Canadian resume, of course, right? There are tons of resources. I mean, Monster, Workopolis are like great places to start. There are obviously professional resume writing services. I do offer that on the one-to-one, but I'm going to be offering that like on some level, like far less. But people, again, who, you know, I've actually invested a few years ago with a great career coach, resume writer, strategist person I did years ago when I was trying to, again, sort of transition away from private practice a little bit and do some other part-time legal work that I was interested in. But I knew that, again, I was, you know, the age of Google. I could look at a million examples, but I really wanted, again, a professional's advice on how to improve my resume and how to target certain types of employers. And it was like, well, it wasn't free. I think I paid like $300-500, and it was well worth the investment, right? To not just get a standardized resume from Googling or a friend of a friend. She really worked with me understanding like how to present my skills properly for the types of like jobs and positions I was looking for at that time. And just, again, shifting my mindset, right? From the just everything's got to be free online and Googling, right? So that was worth the investment. I still have that resume from way back. I've tweaked it over the years. And again, it's not perfect, but it worked for me for my style, like whatever, in terms of professionalism and how to present my skill set. I did get some interviews, but I didn't end up like getting those positions, right? So whatever. So all that to say is at least making sure that your resume is Canadian style. Now, again, even though there's no perfect Canadian style resume, there's certainly ones that look less like they're certainly not and are never, ever going to attract any Canadian recruiter or employer, even if you're here in Canada already as a permanent resident, right? So again, usually it's people who are not in the high skill sets that send me what I call non-Canadian style resumes, but I've still seen resumes from like pretty high-end people, computer science guys, like financial guys with masters, high command of English and professional experience, but their resume is just clearly not Canadian style. So what do I mean by that, right? Like they'll have things like father's name, right? Because that's really big in certain cultures, right? Or mother's like not maiden name, but like in South American, you've got like, you know, your mother's name or whatever it is. You know, putting dates of birth, again, not something you'd see in a Canadian style resume. Putting your actual nationality on some level, like you wouldn't see that in a resume, even if you're a foreign worker. There are different ways that you can present that issue, of course, in a cover letter if you ever are approaching or trying to apply for certain jobs as a non-Canadian, non-permanent resident. But that's not something you would necessarily put in your resume, right? And again, that's sort of like debatable, depending on your situation, depending on who you ask, right? Sort of like ask 5 lawyers, get 20 opinions, right? You're never going to get like doctors. They don't all have the same opinion about, you know, everything, and that's why it's called practice, not a science, right? Legal practice, medical practice. Anyway, so so basically Canadian style resume, like no birth dates, no marital status. You know, putting your home address is kind of pointless. They don't really care where you live in South Africa or Cameroon. Like I would say just keep it to like an email and a Skype. You know, use the common ways that people are using from around the world. Like telephone numbers kind of useless unless it's WhatsApp, but I don't know if like employers will or recruiters would necessarily contact you that way. I would say stick to an email and or Skype, you know, and make sure that you check your email for like things like spam and junk, or, you know, requests on Skype on some level that, you know, you're kind of keeping track of that and things aren't being deleted, declined, or, you know, going into spam, junk folders and all that kind of stuff, right? You know, you can leave your number. You may get a call if and when that were, of course, to happen in the job search, but I would say keep it to things like Skype and email. No birth date, no marital status, no like grandfather's names, no mother's names. Just keep your legal name as it appears on your passport, okay? And again, it will depend, but keep it simple. Less complicated names. Listen, even though Canada is a land of immigrants, if an employer, even if they are an immigrant themselves originally, if it's a name that's like really complicated, don't want to give them like many more names, right? I'm not saying change your name, but you don't need to have like multiple middle names and all that if they're not necessarily like your sort of more proper name from like a passport, okay, if that makes any sense. What else do I see? Again, a lot of the things that I see in the resumes that are not so Canadian style, right, is like basically listing just what you did, like your duties, but not really listing, for example, like what did you achieve, right? So employers, and this is like comes, not like I've thought about all this, right? This comes from like actually really good, like it was not good in how it was presented, but the presenter was really good and I've been sharing it on YouTube, right? Like how to succeed in the Canadian, you know, workforce, and really understanding the Canadian workforce and how that works, right? So really, we're more of a country of like, you know, specialists or niche, like because we're so small on some level compared to the U.S. market, right? So we're never going to compete like being like generalists, whatever, in terms of like our skills as Canadians, right? So Canadian employer situations sort of operate that like on a not subconscious level. But for example, you know, see resumes where people just really list like duties without like accomplishments in what they did, whether it's the summary, whether it's like the actual jobs, like all that they've listed. You know, you should really be listing like achievements, and it doesn't mean you're inventing things that are not true, but you really want to like give tangible examples, like improve productivity by 10%, like, you know, and be able to like talk about how you were able to do that if and when you ever get like an interview, right? But really link that to like what you've achieved, like increasing sales, increasing productivity, decreasing like loss or something like that, right? Like if you know, like if you worked in a restaurant, there was like wastage of food, you could say like you came up with something, a way to like waste less food or something like that. Really talk about what you did to, like I said, really improve the other, like your previous employers and outside of Canada, what you did to improve their situation, because really like employer doesn't really care what you did for somebody else in just plain duties, right? They like lawyers draft things, lawyers go to court, right? They kind of want to know like what did you accomplish, right? Not just what you did, right? If that makes any sense. So more like active versus kind of like passive, showing up for work and just doing your job and being a warm body. There's plenty of that in Canada, plenty of Canadians doing that, right? Or whatever, immigrants that are already here. So you really want to like shine above that, right? What else? What else? I just sort of like, I'm just going to look at my email and see what else I talked about. Yes. And again, stuff like, you know, I shouldn't say, things like putting in your resume, for example, references available upon request. That's kind of falling out of like fashion. Like you don't need to put that, it's kind of obvious. Putting resume at the top or CV, like you don't need to do that. People know what that is, for example. And like basically, like I said, in terms of the cover letter, right? I mean, again, back up, like there is no such thing as one resume. So what I see is like one resume that people want to like use for like everything that they might want to apply for in Canada, right? Like you really need to tailor your resume on you need to like put in work, right? This is the common theme. Things just do not come easy. People don't just get lucky and succeed here in the, you know, the immigration process or in the you know, getting a job or finding an employer to support them in their, you know, migration journey and their goals, right? Like it really is work, right? So you can't just like plop your resume and kind of throw it out everywhere and think it's going to like match every employer's needs, right? You really need to tailor it to whatever the job description is and whatever makes sense for your situation, right? Same thing goes for a cover letter, right? You can't just have like one standard, like you can have a one that you start with, but really you want to tie in, because employers, HR recruiters, whatever, do not have hours to look at your stuff, right? It's going to fall or succeed to get like a call or at least be put in a short list like in 30 seconds, right? Or whatever, like a minute if they read your cover letter, right? Your cover letter should be maybe like 3 or 4 short paragraphs, right? Introduce yourself and basically, you know, tie your skills and accomplishments to the job at hand. Of course, if you're not already a Canadian or a permanent resident, it said there's some level that you're going to have to address the fact that you're not. But again, if you've already created an Express Entry profile and if you're able to explain that to an employer clearly, that you do have an active Express Entry profile, they may or may not know that that's how things are going with the immigration process. So you might want to have a basic, you know, background, like, you know, all immigration applications are being processed through there or something like that. But basically, you know, letting them know that you're Canadian job ready, that, you know, if and when they would like to support you, that they're, I mean, without getting into a long explanation, right? But like there is a process where an employer who's interested in you, like may decide to go through the process. Again, if they decide to, they either figure out on their own or, you know, this is where you should get like specific legal advice, or they will have to. So again, right, it's an investment, but, you know, if an employer really needs your skills, they will invest the time and money into you, right? Because it's actually hard to find like good people in Canada. I don't mean there are no good people in Canada who do jobs, but as an employer, you know, you want, if there are employees you believe in, even if you're not a Canadian or a permanent resident, and, you know, there are many cases where, you know, Canadian employers do go through the process to support you, but they only will if they feel that you've done the work, right? If you start, they, you know, were to contact you and you said, oh, I don't have this yet, I don't have that. I mean, that's going to take you 6 months at least, right? That's too late, like opportunity gone. They're going to go on to somebody else, or they may or may not like wait for you to get your stuff together, right? So basically those are like my general tips on, like I said, the resumes. Like there's no one style that suits all. You know, really you should, again, start kind of figuring out what style works for you. Make it visually appealing. You know, don't pack way too much wording in it. You know, again, there's a lot of like tools out there, right? But like really kind of try to make it like easy to read and very clear and concise, and really about accomplishments where you can, not just listing duties. So, you know, asking some friends that you trust that are professionals to have a look at it, or perhaps investing, you know, whatever, in a resume review service, not just like me, but like whatever. There might be, you know, online services, again, if you trust them, right? And in terms of the issue is, who do you trust? And investing, you know, $200, $300, $400, whatever, in like a better resume may be a good investment in the end, right? And you may not decide to do that, but at least make sure you don't have the things that Canadian resumes do not have, dates of birth, all the stuff I mentioned at the beginning of this point, that it talks about accomplishments. It visually is clean and clear, you know, it doesn't have way too much information packed, that it's easy to read if you were to just to hand it to somebody on the street, and, you know, or at a coffee shop. And the other, last thing I didn't mention is like really try to make your, not really try, like you should be making your job descriptions fit the Canadian right? The Canadian National Occupation Code, right? Making it so, again, nobody cares what you did outside unless it translates somehow into Canadian like jobs, right? So you really need to get familiar, if you don't know what I'm talking about, but the National Occupation like classification or the code is, you really got to start figuring out how your job, some of it's obvious if you're a lawyer, you know, doctor, but you really not need to find like what the appropriate, and again, go through all the links. It is on the internet. Again, you know, a lot of this is information you have to just get through on your own. If you really don't and can't, then that's where you should be hiring one-to-one legal strategic advice or whatever. And like I said, that's what you do with, you know, one-on-one when you hire a trusted professional, right? So day 3, what did I talk about in day 3? So we've got your, you know, your basic, your express entry profile, your IELTS, your foreign education, right? Then you've got your, you know, you've got your Canadian style resume looking a lot better. You've got, you know, one main exam, one main template, so to speak, that you can tweak for different jobs, right? And then you've got your, again, cover letter, 3-4 paragraphs that, again, you can tweak. And in terms of explanations that you have an express entry, you know, like you could say what your points are presently, but that you're willing and able to do what's necessary to support the employer, to support you if they're interested, right? And so again, you know, can do this on your own, so can the employer, but like more and more, there's actually a lot of support being given to employers who want to hire foreigners. So they may not even have to hire a lawyer per se. There's government departments in different parts of the country that are now really trying to help employers get through that process of, you know, trying to hire a foreign worker, right? But again, it's understanding and reaching out. And again, it's not something that takes like a day, right? But like a proactive employer, between what's up on the internet, between you and the employer, you should be able to find appropriate local immigration settlement agencies and kind of, you know, weed through that information if you know, if you want it bad enough and if the employer wants you bad enough, right? So there's no magic solution for that. It just sort of happens as it happens, or it doesn't, right? But if you don't try, you don't know, right? So day 3, and what did I talk about like in day 3 that I want to talk about today, right? I'm moving closer to actually being able to look for a job in Canada and be more effective about it, even if you're not in Canada, you know, even if you're not a permanent resident, of course, right? So networking, right? I mean, networking is the key to really everything for success in Canada, I believe, like whether it's business or employment, I mean, or whatever, right? So I'm assuming we all have friends. Of course, we all have our own network. Some people have a larger group of, you know, friends or colleagues or business associates or in their network, and some people have less, right? It's not about numbers, it's about the quality of your network, right? So basically, you know, it seems overwhelming to start, but really you need to be really effective about it. And this is why this YouTube YouTube video that I watched from a senior person in Canada who talked about his own migration journey, and we're talking about somebody with like a PhD who talked about, I mean, and if we can laugh about it, his, you know, initial problems, even though he had lived in other countries beyond his home country and was a professional, he just didn't quite get the Canadian landscape, right? And thinking that the Canadian landscape is going to, you know, change for you is not realistic. So you're going to have to change to the Canadian employment landscape to truly understand how it works and how networking works, right? And how networking plays into that. So, I mean, networking means you know, you really want to find people or colleagues or contacts or whatever, you know, who are like interested in the same things as you are. So in terms of career stuff, right? Again, there isn't a one size fits all, right? But like you can start with Google, I mean, in that sense, right? Or you can start with like LinkedIn, right? LinkedIn is, it's changed since like Facebook or whatever, Microsoft took it over. Not Facebook. It looks more like Facebook now, but anyway, it's for better or for, depends on how you see that. But basically, you know, there's a wealth of information there. And again, this is not something that's going to happen in like 5 or 10 minutes, even if you hire like a lawyer or hire a career strategist or whatever, right? You really need to take the time, right? But like there's ways to do it more effectively, right? So, excuse me. So, I mean, you really want to have at least a basic professional looking profile, even if you're like a tradesperson or, you know, whatever, like a chef. People think that LinkedIn is just for, you know, lawyers and doctors or whatever, computer people, but that isn't necessarily the case, right? You want to use it almost as like an online resume, but not really. But, you know, it really kind of validates, at least on some level. It doesn't mean there aren't like scammers out there, but like it validates on some level for potential employers and recruiters. And that's where a lot of recruiters are actually still hanging out, right? Like in a lot of fields, right? They're not only on like small websites or Googling things, right? They're really like, LinkedIn is like the marketplace for a lot of like this stuff, employers, recruiters, whatever, in jobs, right? So you want to get on there with like a professional profile. Again, there's no such thing as perfect, but like LinkedIn itself has tons of blogs and posts about how to have a good LinkedIn profile. A decent photo. Doesn't have to be professional, but it should look like a normal, like you're trying to get a job. So get a decent headshot. Means like, obviously just your head, not like your whole body. Have a look at some that, they've got lots of examples of like good, better LinkedIn profiles. Again, there is no such thing as a perfect. It should reflect like you and your style and your industry, right? So it's going to depend. If you're a graphic artist, it's going to be different than if you're like a plumber, right? It's different, right? So you got to kind of like get through it and figure out what's like proper in your industry, for sure. Profile pic, getting the basics of what you did when you did it, and again, keeping in mind stuff from your Canadian style resume should match. And things like the knock descriptions for Canada on some level, on most levels, should like match. You may not have to put the knock on your LinkedIn profile, but you could for your job. So you want to kind of have that all come together, right? Then you want to start kind of, like I said, researching groups and or contacts in your industry, right? So if you're a plumber from, South Africa and you want to connect with like the plumbing industry in Canada, see if there are any like who is in the plumbing industry. Maybe there's like trades recruiters online in LinkedIn. Like, see if they're out there. Again, I don't know, right? It's true that like less trades kind of recruiters and employers are on LinkedIn, but that may not necessarily be true, right? So basically, see what's there and kind of figure it out, right? See if there are any groups, see who like maybe some key people that come up in your search within LinkedIn, and just kind of see and connect if you can. Now, again, LinkedIn has a bunch of rules on how to connect with people. I'm not going to get into that here, but you'd want to like read that and make sure you're not spamming people, and find more effective ways to like connect. So I'm not talking about emailing people and like begging for a job. I'm just saying like connect to start seeing like what are they posting, what are they talking about, what is the industry talking about, what are the current issues, where are current jobs, what are the current trends for Canada, like what provinces and cities might be looking for plumbers, like in this specific example, right? So you want to start spending regular time, and I don't mean 10 hours a day, but like probably daily checking your LinkedIn, daily looking at what's happening, right? Once you feel a bit more comfortable, you can start participating perhaps in some groups. Again, not saying I'm looking for a job, right? You want to give before you ask, right? So you might want to participate in some discussion. It doesn't mean some like PhD thesis post, but you might want to, like some article that somebody shared, right? Or you might want to, if it's an article about that, Canada has a shortage of plumbers in Prince Edward Island, right? You might want to post like, oh, does anybody know if there's a list of employers who actually need plumbers, right? That might be like it still might be seen as like, oh, what is this person is asking for a job, right? But again, it's a way to like interact without like being so direct and saying like, I want a job, right? Or you might want to, that was kind of maybe a bad example, but you want to like post so that you're actually contributing, right? So what are your thoughts, ideas? You could post, for example, that might be an interesting post where it might say, Canada needs plumbers, right? But you might say, then why are the provinces making it so difficult, for foreign trained plumbers to get, certified in the province? That's been my experience, right? So that you're not asking for anything, you're just contributing, and that might start a discussion, right? That might actually start a discussion. Other people who are following you or following the discussion, it might start a discussion, right? So that's a productive discussion, right? Like, why are the provinces making it difficult for foreign trained plumbers to work in the province if it seems like the province needs plumbers, right? If you see the difference between like, you're not posting like I need a job, you're contributing to the discussion, right? And you're showing that you're reading it and thinking about it, right? So that's kind of an example how to like organically kind of grow your network, right? Like go within LinkedIn and find key people, key groups, follow key discussions, and just kind of like go with the flow, but make sure your profile is as like professional and as complete as possible. You can add in your little headline, again, this is where strategically, you can certainly add that you are presently an express entry profile candidate, and what your score is, or that you're open to discussing possibilities for any supportive employers that may want to help you. It's a short, I think it's like 150 characters. So you're not going to be able to put like your whole entire life story there, but it might, it's a quick way when people look at your profile picture and you're kind of like little of who are you, that might be, a good way to do that. So you could put like South African plumber, presently in the express entry pool, seeking, supportive employer in Canada or something like that, right? Or seeking employer in Canada, right? And then, the rest will have your background. And if somebody's interested, they'll reach out to you, right? But it's really important to get those keywords. Again, that's why like the knock stuff in your description. And it's really important because more and more LinkedIn is like a mini Google, and many, keywords are important, and the right words are important, and the right Canadian words, Canadian employment words are important, right? So really important to like start putting all those pieces together, right? The knock description, understanding what the terminology is in Canada in your industry. I'll give you a quick example in my world, right? Like in the States, like lawyers are called attorneys, right? So, Google is smart, and, of course, finding words that are similar, okay, but don't always count on that being true, right? So if I'm looking for an attorney, the lawyer's not going to match, right? More importantly, like for example, Ontario has old English way of calling a lawyer kind of officially is actually barrister and solicitor, right? Like somebody who goes to court and somebody who deals with documents. Barrister, go to court, solicitor, do documents. In Ontario, you are a barrister and a solicitor by virtue of being a lawyer or a member of the Law Society of Upper Canada, if you can follow that. In England, apparently there's still a distinction. You're either a barrister or a solicitor, whatever. And in the States, you can do it all, but you're not a lawyer necessarily, you're an attorney, right? So there's all this so you kind of want to get that lingo, because if you don't kind of like behave like the locals, you kind of stand out like a sore thumb, right? You may not want to stand out like a sore thumb necessarily, right? So if I'm writing letters to US employers looking for work as an attorney, and if I start out that I'm a Canadian trained lawyer, like it's true, but it's really showing. Or if I don't explain, like I'm like FYI, that's what we call, if it's the kind of employer I think I can be kind of like not cutesy with, but like FYI, barrister, solicitor, lawyers equals attorney in the States, then, I'm kind of showing that I don't really understand the US like marketplace, right? For lawyers, attorneys, whatever, right? So you kind of want to fit in with the locals. So that's really important with LinkedIn. Now, that said, everything won't be on LinkedIn, right? But a lot of it is. So for example, even like trade associations will have like their own LinkedIn page. So for example, there might be Plumbing Association of Canada, more realistically, maybe, Plumbing Association of Quebec, Ontario, whatever, right? Trade associations in general, right? Contractors association. So whatever it might be, usually it's not going to be thousands, right? It's going to be like a few, one, whatever. It's going to like narrow, like as you start this kind of stuff, it's going to narrow your network, right? But you're going to be connected, if you're doing it right, to, again, right, the movers and shakers and the specific information you need to be much more like confident as you sort of build on your Canadian job search, even though you're not in Canada yet and think, oh, this is hopeless. Like it's not guaranteed, but it's more guaranteed if you're putting in this kind of work that's going to take you realistically, like probably whatever, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months. It's not, you don't build your network in a day, right? Like, I don't know, I have over 500 connections on LinkedIn. I started my LinkedIn years ago. In all honesty, I don't overly use LinkedIn, except I have gone through stages where I do, and have connected to certain people. People have found me on LinkedIn, like, and for clients they wanted to refer me to, they somehow lost my email, I don't know, whatever, and they found me on LinkedIn, and, literally like and doing consultations or whatever. So it is like an important tool, and you don't know when it's going to be important. That's my point, right? Definitely growing my network has taken, years, right? So it, again, but it's like a stepping stone, right? Like who I've connected with around the world. Some people have been scammers or whatever, and I delete and block them, a little bit like Facebook. But again, that's like that. You just live and learn, and obviously do your due diligence and understand that, promises of jobs and stuff in Canada are probably slim to none guaranteed jobs. But, again, you kind of have to get through that networking process and sort of figure it out on your own on some level, but understanding that guaranteed jobs are probably not going to exist. Now, job offers that may be there with supportive employers, and if the people are legitimate who you're dealing with, won't be shy to give answers to questions. Typically, you shouldn't be paying a recruiter. Recruiters are paid by employers, for example. And promises of guarantees you should run away from fast, because nobody can guarantee the outcome in that sense. And because it depends on you, depends on the employer if it's legitimate, right? And there's a process that usually interviews, do you meet the requirements? They'll ask, do you have IELTS? Do you have this, right? So if you don't, you're just starting then, even like there's no point, there's no shortcuts, right? You can't just have a shortcut and get a job offer without actually having what you need, as I've already talked about, right? Like the IELTS, potentially the express entry, of course, which you should, of profile, foreign education assessed, or at least understanding what needs to be done, right? Some you won't be able to get assessed like from outside of Canada, like trade stuff, but understanding the process that you need to. There might be online courses you can sign up for even before you get here, or like I said, that even if you don't know you'll get here, but it's like a circle. If you don't start investing in that process, you're never going to put yourself ahead of the person who just stares at the screen and Googles and goes into Facebook groups and thinks it's going to magically appear for them without investing time and money sometimes, of course, into positioning yourself like above the 99% who won't do this work, right? Or take these steps, right? So moving along, because it's like I'm talking a lot, which is something I do, of course. And so, yeah, so that was the sort of day 3 that I talked about in my email, series, and that I talked about right now. So then moving along, so sorry, just to make it clear back up. So the world won't start and end on LinkedIn, but it's a great starting point. So my other point that I kind of buried in that, what I was talking about, is that, it may be that you need, in your case, like should also be connecting to specific associations, right? And again, a lot of associations will have a section now for foreign trained or internationally trained blank, accountants, plumbers, lawyers, doctors, whatever. There is a process for all that, right? The associations, which, a lot of professions are first of all, are, what I'm trying the word, I'm just having a blank here, not controlled. Yeah, they're regulated at the provincial level, right? Canada's a country, but you've got provinces, right? So you really want to, again, narrow down, through LinkedIn, but through Googling, of course, right? What your association is. That's why like the NOC description and truly understanding like what you are in Canadian terms will narrow down the association level of maybe starting that process even before you're here, right? Or what is it you need to do? A lot of them now are offering online courses, like paid, but offering before you ever get here and get an offer, like to show that you're serious about it, right? There are most of them. I know accountants and all this sort of stuff, nursing. It's not going to guarantee you're getting a job, and it's not going to guarantee that you're going to get like an invitation to apply for immigration, but guaranteed it will put you closer to that, right? More and more as the express entry pool like policy refines itself, right? I'm imagining that they will start including that, if, meaning overtly, like they do ask it in the profile, right? Like, I can't remember the exact wording now, right? But like, how much have you done to get closer to being able to actually work in your field in Canada, right? Because even if you get PR status, right, and you're a foreign trained nurse, if you arrive here, you're not going to be able to work as a nurse in Ontario without like literally going through, I don't know, like 6 months, a year, whatever, to get your stuff done, right? Like I had a client who was sponsored by his Canadian wife, an American nurse, had been a nurse for 15 years, like emergency, trauma, American, right? English. And it took him like almost a year to get recognized in Ontario. And he was shocked, but the reality is that he had to go through a bunch of things he didn't even realize. And like I said, it's all online. And, I had been warning him, but I remember him connecting with me after he got through it. He was like, wow, I should have listened to you, because it did take a lot longer and I had to do many more steps than I imagined that I was hearing wrongly from people, right? So, and that I had warned him about, right? So anyway, so, it'll start narrowing down LinkedIn and associations and like at the local level. And it might also like settlement type agencies won't necessarily help you as a foreigner who's not here yet, but they might be sources of information. Depends, right? Again, it's going to depend on you taking the time and really keeping track of who you're contacting with and eliminating things that aren't useful or good resources in your network, and really highlighting the people, groups, and associations that are, right? It starts narrowing down, right? So moving on to finish up. So that was sort of the day 1 to 3. So then day 4, as after talking about sort of like building your network, actually, was that day 4 or was that day 3 that I talked about? Let me have a quick look. So the IELTS and the English language and your foreign credentials, the Canadian style resume, then building your network. No, I think I sort of jumped. Maybe I jumped, Yeah, but anyway, in terms of the network, like really, like I said, so much, people think it's who, like people will say to me like, oh yeah, it all depends on who you know, right? The answer is like, yes, it does, right? Even in your home country, there's a level of, yeah, it's who you know that puts you in touch with the right people. It doesn't mean that's why you got the job. It might be in your home country, right? But like in general in Canada, right? employers are not, even like family-run businesses are not interested in keeping whatever people in positions, including family members who are like going to destroy the business, right? They're interested in competent people, but they're interested in competent people who can do the job, do it whatever, relatively well, exceed at their job, whatever it is in your industry, right? But that they know, right? That they trust, right? There's a level of trust that needs to happen when any employer or business brings you into their inner, like, trusted circle of, you know, making a profit, because businesses are there to make a profit, right? I mean, not talking about government jobs, but like businesses, right? Any kind of business you'll work for, or industry, or even like nursing. Okay, it's not there to make a profit, but they need to trust you, right? Otherwise, you become a liability, right? And no organization and no Canadian employer wants liabilities or wants to minimize the potential for liabilities, right? So yeah, knowing who you know is important. It may not get you the job, but it'll get you in front of the right people. And the truth is, like 80–90%, there's no official stat, but like, you know, the running stats are 80–90% of like jobs are filled through what they call the hidden job market, right? So it means like they may not ever get even posted on some job board. There's 1,000,001 job boards, right? The truth is, those are jobs that like they can't find another way to fill them. It sounds kind of silly, right? It's like, or they want to like expand their reach, of course, and like give others opportunities on some level, or they need to prove that they're, you know, casting the net wide, like for the process of actually making a job offer to a foreigner. You do have to prove that you've advertised widely and all that stuff. So I'm not saying that that's why you're seeing all these posts, you know, on Job Bank and all these other, like even LinkedIn. But all that to say is like, yes, it's who you know, and that's why it's so important to grow your Canadian network and to grow it efficiently and effectively, right? So yeah, so that was sort of like, again, sort of more on the importance of building your network, understanding how to strategically you know, network, and again, these are like many points, right? But like research is a big one, right? Not being kind of like just posting saying, give me a job, like that really isn't going to be effective. You want to see as being a part of a group or part of your network and actually contributing, whether it's just like comments, thoughts, whatever. It just shows that you're thinking things through that people are posting and talking about in the industry, like recruiters, employers, whatever it might be. And yeah, and just staying active and on top of it, right? In terms of that stuff. So number 5, the day 5, I think I might have combined 2, but that's okay. So like I said, the building blocks are so important, and the foundations are so important. And then the last day, what did I talk about in the last day? Actually, I'm going to look at the email, which is kind of funny because, okay, so the last day, what did I talk about? That's actually interesting. What were like my other tips? Yeah, but networking is so important, right? Yeah, I just kind of gave resources, right? So I was just like, basically, yeah, of course, saying that there's like tons of resources, but like I said, I'm going to sort of finish this this live YouTube. I don't think I have viewers, but that's okay. Probably just the way I did the settings or whatever. But basically, it is so important to, first of all, I mean, like, not get overwhelmed, right? Because I give a lot of information, even when I do one-to-one consults, right, or my career coaching. I do feel like I overwhelm. A lot of people have said that, right? But I really do think it's important to like be overwhelmed, because it kind of like shocks you into like action on some level, right? Like, be overwhelmed, but know that of course we all have limits of time, our brain power, whatever you want to call it. You know, even limits to our network. There's only, you know, you can have 1 million friends on Facebook or whatever on LinkedIn, but you're really only, you're going to then gravitate to the like-minded people or people that are useful for you. It doesn't mean that you're like only connecting with people or that you're friends with people, whatever, in the real world for what they can give you, right? But there is an element of, yeah, you know, you want to know who a person is, right? Look at who they surround themselves with, right? If you're surrounding yourself with people who are just going on about it, you're never going to find a job in Canada. It's impossible to, like, you know, what are you listening to this Sylvia? She just wants your money or whatever it is. Yeah, first of all, this is like free, whatever. You know, and I give a lot of free information, but you know, at the end of the day, yeah, I get paid for some of my knowledge when people, and my services when people decide that that's what they want, but I'm not here to convince anybody of that, right? But the truth is that, you know, you really are the sum of your network, right? So, you know, if you're surrounding yourself with people or like the mindset and whatever, family, friends, network that, you know, in your home country, like, you're never going to find a job in Canada, that's just bullshit. It's not true. It isn't, because I know people who have. It doesn't mean that everybody, right? Everybody isn't going to get what they want in life, but, you know, definitely you are not going to get what you want by just sitting back and hoping and Googling and Facebooking and like sending me messages or employers or recruiters messages like, get me a job, find me a job, right? if you're posting to people who are saying, I have jobs for this, right? I saw some stuff on LinkedIn and Facebook. There's like a million groups, you know, saying guaranteed dishwashers or, you know, jobs in Canada, you know, apply. Like, okay, yes and no, but do you think Canada's going to bring in like 1 million dishwashers because whatever, Canadians don't want to do the job or people that are here don't want to do the job? Like, no, they can't bring in 1 million. And like, even if 1 million want to come in, there's always going to have to be a cutoff, right? So how is the cutoff going to happen normally, right? The reality is when it's legal, even if Canada is looking for dishwashers, giving that example, right? For whatever reasons, right? And if you're that person, but again, who are they going to pick? The person who has like 3 on the IELTS? No, not really, because even if you're dishwashing, you need to like function in Canada, right? And that's just the reality. Even beyond your work, you need to function, right? Function at the bank, function in public, and just be more of like a person that's living in the community in Canada, even if you're in your own immigrant community. Not smart to just isolate yourself, right? So who has better English? Who's maybe actually has provided proof of a high school education? Normally you need at least a high school education. So if you've done all that and you see this kind of post and it's legitimate, right? You are gonna be, if there's like 1 million people applying and they're only gonna take 10, I mean, again, right, the more you have done to prepare and show you're serious, right, the better of a candidate you are, more chance that you will be that person. So all the other people, 900, you know, whatever it is, 999,000 people who said you're not going to get it and you're negative and then just applied anyway, yeah, they won't get it because they weren't ready, right? But you're going to be like, yeah, it took me months and I was ready, and guess what? I've got the job offer, employer, work permit, PR, whatever the heck it is, right? So again, it's not to say that that's going to happen all the time, but when people ask me what are the chances of succeeding, you know, and following these steps, I can't give you percentage, because at the end of the day, nobody's really keeping track of this, like not really. At the end of the day, even if I tell you it's 99%, as I tell my clients, if I tell you it's 99% guaranteed, and I'm lying, or I've just like found that stat somewhere on Google, at the end of the day, I mean, it makes you feel better in that moment, right? But it's also a way to kind of lie to you and get you to like, whatever, buy my product, pay me, I don't know, or do things, right? But at the end of the day, if you're part of the 1% who doesn't succeed, like, woo, so then what? You're just, I mean, you can either blame me, blame the universe, whatever, right? So at the end of the day, it's not about stats, right? It's about facts and you and how you are actually positioning yourself better than the other people who think a lot and don't do, which I have found, it's not a critique, but it's reality of business people, colleagues, friends who've even said to me, wow, you know, you're so lucky you get to travel around and work from your computer now and you're doing this career coaching and oh my God. And, you know, like, I don't know what I'm doing, and I didn't know what I was doing when I started out, but I just knew I wanted to live differently than working in the government, for example. And, you know, it's not all easy being a Canadian lawyer. That nobody was waiting for me to become a lawyer and pay me like $1 million. No, that's like not true. I had to work, and I still do, and in my business. And like I said, 99.9% of people don't want to do that, right? Even my friends and colleagues, like whatever. And I'm not judging them, but you know, don't start saying that, you know, I'm lucky, or if people are going to be looking at you and saying, wow, you're getting some like emails about potential jobs, like, oh, you're so lucky. Well, no, it's not luck. You've built at that point, you will have built the blocks that I've talked about, hopefully, and implemented them like day by day, even giving yourself like an hour a day, an hour every few days, or every like 2 days, to work on all the things that I've talked about, right? And it really is, inevitably success is there, and whatever success is, like whether it takes you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, or listen, even if it doesn't get you PR, okay, in the worst case scenario, you don't know what opportunities. We are more and more a world of online, right? There may be potential for different types of, I don't know, work, or you find something else to do through the online world that maybe it doesn't get you PR status like ever right away, but it gives you some other economic benefit, right? You don't know, or it gives you a chance to work like in another country. Maybe it's not your first pick, but you know, it might give you a chance to work in another country. I don't know. We don't know. We don't know these things, right? And I don't know these things, but I do know that the more you align yourself and get yourself ready for the opportunity that you want, and think that you're already there on some level, and act like it, and network with the right kind of information and the right kind of people, and as that narrows, you are closer to the goal, even if you don't realize it as you're going along, right? So anyway, hopefully that was helpful. I'm going to now be quiet. I don't think I got any viewers on the YouTube channel, but you know what? I don't know. I'm playing around with this stuff. Facebook is different because you can see like your viewers. I'm going to try to learn the YouTube presentation stuff a lot better so I can share screen next time. I'm going to see if I can figure that out. So make sure to catch me this evening, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or subscribe to my YouTube channel. Make sure to hit subscribe so you get updates for when I upload a new video. And I'm going to be talking about my online school launch, and I'm super excited about it. Like I said, I'm going to talk about it much more later this evening, and I'm going to repost on Facebook and different channels I'm trying to get into, Pinterest and Instagram if I can. Twitter, not so much. Don't really like Twitter, but officially I'm on there. But that's it. So hopefully that was useful. Pass this on to anybody that you think, share it, that you think might get any use out of this. Subscribe to my channel. Ask them to subscribe to my channel so that they can get updates of when I go live, and lots of improvements and interesting projects and ideas like swirling in my brain and actually in the brain of a client, and that's, you know, that's to be revealed. Ideas on how to share, you know, my knowledge. It's not unique knowledge, but it's unique to my style. How to share knowledge of 17 years and counting experience as a Canadian immigration lawyer, but like I said, more importantly now as like a career coach and strategist for people not wanting, so that they don't feel lost and just don't know how to start and what actions they need to take to improve their chances of, first of all, I mean, getting to Canada at some level, but really, yes, even if they get to Canada, how to actually find and have a fulfilling job and or career like after they get here, which is like super important. So that's it. See you later. Thanks for hanging out with me, or thanks for watching if you are watching this on replay.